Hi, everyone. It's Martha Novak, and this is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. And I just popped a piece of apple as my breakfast. You caught me right in the middle. How are you? My mouth is still full. That's embarrassing. I hope you all are doing well today. We are having a major snowfall outside, and it's just perfectly beautiful. I'm such a child when it comes to snow. I love snow. And my husband, who is from Austria, as most of you know, has had quite enough of it. So we have quite different opinions, but I just get real happy when I see a snowfall like this. The only thing that could have made this better was it was a gift overnight, you see, and I'd like to see it falling in the daytime, but I think we're expecting more today, so I should get that part of me satisfied. Guys, hello. We are talking about some very important things at the start of the new year, some fundamental things we need to set in place, right, to have a happy life. Pardon me, apple. Yep, to have a happy life. And I started out making this show about boundaries. Boundaries are extremely important, but they're not the most important thing. Because boundaries are only there to serve you as the gatekeeper, who is there to support, protect your sense of self. So I think before we even talk about boundaries, and we are going to talk about that today, I think it's extremely important to talk about what is your sense of self and how do you go about developing it. Here's the interesting thing to me. The sense of self, and we're going to talk about this in a lot of detail, refers to your sense of identity or awareness of who you are. At your essential best, who you are. Okay, it's not just at your best either, but to me, I'm using that term very broadly because we're all human. We have light and dark, right? So the sense of self is the authentic being that contains all of that. Your sense of self, who you are, that is different from others. Okay? Now, why aren't we all born with it? Well, we are and we aren't. Because it's innately in you. It lies undeveloped until we develop it. And in your childhood, in most people's childhood, certain things happen to it. You maybe have been brainwashed out of it. You may have been trained out of it. For example, if you're an artist and you came into a very rigid household whose mother and father are very brainy people and thought that saved them, then they're going to train you out of who you basically are. You may have been humiliated out of it or ridiculed out of it. And you may have not been allowed to have it at all if there was a lot of emotional problems in your house and someone who usurped all the time and attention and energy. So for many reasons, we don't have it the way we will have developed it. I think this is part of our divine quest from the ego child's mind to the highest self mind. We're just using different words for this. Who are you? Beyond all the pretense of who you are, beyond your meeting the expectations of other people. Who are you? That's what today's show is about. Okay. So, we're going to be getting to boundaries, don't you worry. But I think that this is an important first step to talk about this. You know, I have a lot of people. I remember a call I had maybe a year ago on this show, and somebody was talking about how much they wanted to find their next job because they wanted to find their divine purpose. And I called them on that because, guys, you don't find your divine purpose by deciding to find your divine purpose. You find it going on this journey. And you certainly can't find it if you don't know who you are and have a sense of self and authenticity. Now we're talking about your divine purpose, you see. But one doesn't just automatically decide, oh, I think I'm going to go and find my divine purpose next. It's fooling you, the ego child's mind is, when it's telling you to do something like that. You can't cut to the chase. You have to let these things organically develop. I know in my own life, years ago, I was always a creative little thing. I'm kind of doing the same thing I've always done, right? In the broadest sense. I write, I talk to people well, or semi-well. I am creative in all sorts of ways. I make jewelry. I have fun directing theater and film. I am an actor in theater and film from time to time. And then I started teaching. And I started teaching an energy system that just kind of came out of me every week. It's the base of what then I turned around and taught and do teach still in business, an energy system for reaching peak performance. Hello, Barbara. Hello, Vicki. So glad that you all are all here. And then people started approaching me. It was the strangest thing over a period of time. And saying, we know what you're talking about. You're talking about the soul and doing business from that. And sure enough, indeed, that's what I was doing. So you'll have to forgive me. When it's really cold weather like this, even though I'm warm and toasty on the inside, my body seems to know. And my nose runs in the cold, so there we are. I hope you're warm and toasty wherever it is you are. Okay, let's go into some of this, but let's first start with a prayer, because it's very important that you open to receive some of these messages and use them however the higher self tells you that you should. One step at a time, by the way. One step at a time. And I've also see that I have a call. So I'll be going to you at an 850 exchange in just a minute. And I'll look forward to seeing what you have to say. All right. Dear God, thank you so much for the lessons we're about to receive. Open us now to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do in the truth that lies in your enlightenment. Show us our next steps. We ask that we not be overwhelmed, but see them one at a time, that we have the courage to implement them and the excitement that our lives are beginning here at the beginning of January, as we make this 2022 a very good year. And we now open to the truth, open to the light, open to the joy. We ask that these things be so, and so it is. Hello, Peter. Come on and join us. And, I'm not really good at knowing how to do a lot of technology. So things flash on my screen, like Peter wanted to join the video, and I'm saying, for heaven's sakes, Peter, join, because I don't know how to do that. I'm over here kind of doing my thing. All right, which is talking, giving you information, drinking my tea, and having a good morning with you. I look forward to that each week. Let's see who this is on hold today and what they have to tell us. And hang on. Hang on. Let's see. Hi. I'm talking to an 850 exchange. This is Martha Novak. To whom am I speaking?
This is Lisa, Martha.
Oh, Lisa. How are you, love?
I'm good. I'm good on this cold morning. I just wanted to call and tell you that I love you so much, and I love your show, and I am just going to sit back and listen because I love it.
Oh, you're so sweet, Lisa. We're so glad you're with us today. A lot of people are checking in. Kim, I'm so glad that you're with us today, too. But Lisa, thank you so much for calling in and saying that. That's just dear. I'll leave the line open if you want. You are on the line to talk to me, which I'm awfully glad you are. And but if this is how you want to listen to, I'm just going to leave the line open, okay?
Okay, and this one's about boundaries, and boy, do we need those.
Don't we, though? I mean, it's a confusing world right now, and one of the reasons I think it's so confusing is everybody's trouncing over everybody's boundaries. They don't seem to have a sense of their own boundaries, and I think people are crossing them all the time, and we're crossing our own. So I think this is a really important topic for us to talk about. So thank you so much for saying that, Lisa. And chime in whenever you want, because the line's going to be open, okay?
Okay.
All right, my darling. So let's talk about, loves, what having a sense of self means. This is from an article, if you all want to refer to it, called How Do I Develop a Strong Sense of Self? It says it was medically reviewed by Robin Brock. As usual, I'm going to start out with some of these articles, and the end result for me is consciousness, of which having a sense of self and strong boundaries is essential. My job is not just to help you feel better. Of course, you feel better along the way when you start putting some of these things to practice. And I'm delighted about that. But how I differ from some of the people that write these articles, and why I always say I'm going to kind of do my own thing here, is because this radio show, you and I are in agreement to go in the direction of awareness, consciousness, and enlightenment. Okay, so we've said that the sense of self refers to your sense of identity and the awareness of who you are. It's what distinguishes you from others. It's interesting because behaviors are really not where the impact of this is. When I think of that first line that they have written, I think of a man I used to know who was a musician and a composer. And he wrote very modern music. I think he's probably still out there doing that. He was always trying to distinguish himself from others by making his music very odd and surprising and all that. But here's the interesting thing. It was never great. You know why? Because it was coming from the ego child's mind, where he had to be different that way. Now, that's not what I'm talking about, kids. This is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a journey and an essential part of who you really are, stripped away from all the pretenses, all the trying to be something, trying to best somebody else, trying to have the best symphony, That's not what we're saying. We're saying, and I guarantee you this is true, there is something you were born with that's so essential, that is incredibly valuable and important, that you find it and give it to this world in some way. The world would benefit from it. You would benefit from it, because everybody wins in this situation. But we've learned to be pretentious, and we've learned to be even narcissistic, and we've learned to compete with everyone and not to bring out the best of us. That's where our minds should be, developing us, doing what we need to do to find us and who we really are. In my book, The Life You Want, you can find it on my website. The first line is, this is the age of individual consciousness. And what you do from now on is going to determine everything. It will. And that's why we're talking about this show today. Now, in this article, and I think that we should put this on the table, having a strong sense of self is integral because it helps you stay true to what you believe in. Okay. When you have a strong sense of self, you, by the way, prioritize information coming into you, and you know what's important and what's not important, and what to think about, what to throw away, and what to act on, by the way, when external influences happen to you. Without a strong sense of self, you believe everything, and it upsets you, and it overwhelms you. And I've known a lot of people through my years that the last one to influence them is the one they believe. That isn't always the best information, is it? Okay. Your sense of self influences the thoughts and feelings you have about yourself as a person and how. If you are living through other people, if you are hoping that they are going to be so sure they can guide your life because you are unsure, you're going to end up in a place that you're not happy. How you are at peace with yourself, real peace, the peace beyond all understanding that is promised to us. How you find that is indeed to find who you really are and be at peace with that. There's an acceptance here in this of all of who you are, the light and the dark, the person that burps on on Facebook Live, the mistakes, the successes, everything. All of it is you. Why isn't that all right? If you have any answers to that, about why it isn't all right, that's your ego child's mind. Because the bottom line is, it's all right. I have, I've taught my advanced classes now for, 20 years or so, more. And they often say to me, I hear your voice saying, and why isn't that all right when something happens? And I'm going to ask you to please remember that. You don't have to remember my voice, but I want you to remember, why isn't that all right? Because the ego will rise up and say, it's not all right because I didn't get what I want. It's not all right because of this. It's not all right because of that. It's all ego. That's how you can find what's blocking a happy life. Listen to that voice. Write it down. Say, do I really want to believe these things? Or do I want to believe that it's all right? Because it's all right. God is in the middle of everything. The light and the dark. It's all everything. And you're drilling down to the essential you. And one of the big characteristics of that in consciousness, you ready for this spiritual word? Is cooperation. Cooperation with the ascended God you are. You see? Good. Thank you, Barbara. Aren't you the sweetest thing? Okay. Let me get back to the article because that was me taking off. All right. Your sense of self relates to your self-esteem and confidence levels. That's the truth, both of which can impact your mental and physical health. Studies show that self-esteem and confidence are directly correlated to emotional wellness, making a strong sense of self important. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes a sense of self is also referred to as a self-concept. The dictionary defines self-concept as the idea of mental image one has of oneself and one's strengths, weaknesses, status, self-image, all that kind of thing. And it's tricky, isn't it? Because we all wear an image until we don't. Honey, but we're all human. And part of our journey to self is being comfortable with our humanness, because we get in there and we criticize it and we compartmentalize certain things we don't like, instead of just saying, yeah, I'm all of that. I'm all of that and a lot more. Here I am launching off again, but here we go. Guys, think of the worst thing you can think about yourself. Okay? You might not be good with money, or you might overspend yesterday, or before you could not be snowbound, you could have done anything. You've made relationship mistakes. Okay. Whatever it is, think about it in a minute. And let me ask you an all-important question. Is that all you are? You see, when you put it in perspective like that, of course it isn't. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You're a whole and dimensional person. What you're doing is focusing on the negative, on the mistake, and you're focusing on that, narrowing your focus, narrowing your energy to target that, and you don't see anything else. Sweeties, we're everything. Okay? I'm the most generous person in the world, and I'm the pettiest. I have all of that range. You do too. We have all of this range, the loving, the most unloving, all of it. Why are we working so hard to wear an image, to wear a front, to pretend, when there we go. Put your arms around the whole of you. And let's accept and get comfortable with that. And in that, we have the choice to choose the higher way of all those characteristics and live from that highest self. But if we are denying ourselves in all our aspects, judging them, distorting them, covering them up, we never get to what's going to free us, which is the acceptance of our humanness. And our humanness, you remember what I say about the Trinity that we were taught, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost? The Father is the part of you inside. Forget the gender thing. That's ridiculous. The part of you inside that is the spiritual, godly aspect. It's the part of you. It's your highest self. The part of you that always tells you the truth, right? Holy Ghost is everything out here that is not you, but that is still God. Now, what connects the inner and the outer? Many people believe Jesus. Darling, in my book, and I don't mean to offend anybody, I think Jesus was a placeholder for you. It's the human experience that is that middle part, the sun. It is the human experience. The human experience connects the divine, connects the inner and the outer, the divine and the mundane, connects it all. And yet, we've learned to judge it. We think we're not enough. Well, that's where your sense of self has been all along. Let's bring it forth. Somebody understands it. I'm so glad. Thank you. Okay. The article goes on to say, and I concur, what does it mean to have a strong sense of self? It means you have a strong sense of your personal identity. Again, This is not the egoic child's mind identity that I'm talking about. I don't know what the article's talking about. That's rather a general term. Personal identity. Okay, you've got a personal identity. Well, I had one 30 years ago when I was full of ego. But it wasn't the real one. You see what I'm talking about. So, to have a strong sense of self, you have a deep understanding of your personal values. You're conscious of how you operate internally. You know your likes and dislikes. You know what your strengths are. You know, by the way, what your weaknesses are, and you embrace those. Why not? I want to recommend an article to you, which I just loved. I actually did a show on it a while back, but you can find the article. It's called The 8 Intelligences. It's a very good article. And for those of you that are in a relationship with someone, it's a particularly good article because you'll have 3 or 4 of those intelligences and you will not have all of them. And it's fascinating for you to sit down with your partner and go, these are mine, these are yours. They are completely different. And then you realize, I've been trying to make you like me. You've been trying to make me like you. We have different intelligences. And if we can bring those, if we can both respect what we've got and bring those to the table, we're a very strong team. You should know what those are anyway. I think that's a really important part of your knowing yourself. I think everything here in life is here to show you yourself. Look at Myers-Briggs test, which a lot of disparagement, by the way, has been heaped upon the Myers-Briggs test. It's like 45 to 55% accurate. By the way, most personality tests are. You know why? Because you don't know yourself. And you answer from the ego child's mind, but still putting on a pretense, an image that you haven't challenged yet to know that's not true. You're believing your own image, you see. So things like that. And you've heard me lecture here on balance points. What are your balance points? The balance points, in my estimation, this is my language, by the way, when I talk about balance points. Balance points are things that you do, things you value that make you you. For example, I put family first. For example, I adore animals. I could not live without animals around me. I love animals that are wild. I love animals in the house, dogs and cats, and I'd have birds and God knows what else if I could. I love beauty of all kinds. I love art, sculpture, snow, flowers, color. I love that. I love all of that. I love writing. I love nature. If I were deprived of those things, I would not be me. Guys, the lights are going on and off. We are losing power here and there. And I hope we stay on the air. I do want you to know we're having a big snowstorm outside. And we'll try to keep on the air. What I don't say this week, we'll say next week, okay? When the weather is a little more cooperative. But hopefully we can get through this. You've heard me lecture, too, on values. I think these having values is part of your sense of self. I have a very different way of getting to values, however. And here is the way I suggest you work with them. I've been very successful with other clients working with them this way. And a lot of people have never considered their values. If you get on the internet, go under any a long list of values. You can just enter in your search engine list of values and just find the longest one, okay? And what I want you to do is choose 3, and only 3, that you already are. Don't choose what you aspire to be. That hasn't fully formed yet. I want you to choose 3 things that you already are. And I want you to practice for the next several weeks on, in every situation, bringing those into the situation. Every time, whether you're having an argument with somebody, or whether you're loving your dog and cat in front of the fireplace, or whether you are doing your work at your desk, these values must be present because they are part of you. For example, one of my values is creativity, okay? One of my values is creativity. Another one of my values is the love of people and animals. If I cross any of those lines, if I am not loving in a situation, my body tells me, because I react. If I'm not creative, if I don't think of win-win solutions, my body will react. My body will tell me, it will tell me by my not feeling good, by my anxiety, that I've crossed one of my own boundaries. Okay? So it's very important for you to choose 3 that you absolutely, in total emotional honesty, are. Practice living within those, having it conscious in your mind and quite deliberate, to bring those into every situation you ever have. And don't cross those, because if you cross those, you're crossing a very essential boundary. Now, the values are a little different from boundaries, because the values are the essential part of you, and the boundaries protect the essential part of you. You understand? So your behaviors in bringing those into a situation are the protection of that. This is who I am. Here they are. Well defined. But that you have them is you. Okay. So the article, sorry, I'm launching off today. The article goes on to say, it's really important to look at your actions and behaviors objectively, and that is a real essential part of having a good sense of self, that you can look at things objectively. I often say, when you're upset about something, don't be down on the battlefield as a foot soldier. Try to go up on the hill and look at what's happening. Look at your upset. It's bearing witness to you and your feelings and your life, and it gives you a perspective that you don't have if you're down there just slugging away, you see, on the battlefield. Life isn't a battle, by the way. We just think it is in the ego child's mind. And so it's extremely important for you to have that perspective, the witness, the observer of what's going on, and it will give you a lot of insight. This article goes on to say that having a good sense of self certainly propels you to do the right thing. And you'll remember that I said that often a motivation for doing whatever you do as the highest self is always, it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. Sometimes I give my classes exercises. For example, I gave them an exercise of, you're at the mall. Now, you're late for a birthday party. This is the birthday party of your boss's child. There's a big promotion at stake here, and you're, in the running for that. And you run in the mall to buy a present for this child. You want to impress, right? And you come out, and you get in the car, and you're in a terrible hurry. And, all right, Toffel, stop. That's my dog sitting behind me, who is barking at anything that walks by. And it was a cat. You're in a terrible hurry, so you kind of gun it out of the parking place and you hit the car behind you. It's a parked car. Nobody's in it. What would you do? This is one of the things I often give classes. What would you do? And we have a roundtable discussion about this. Some people say, I'd leave a note. I hit your car. Here's how to contact me. I'm so sorry. Some people said, I'd pretend to leave a note. Some people said, look, I'm in a hurry. I got to drive off. It's interesting because what reveals consciousness is not so much what you do, but why you're doing it. Are you leaving that first note? I did it. Please contact me. Because you think somebody saw you? Because your guilt is ravaging you if you don't do it? Those are all ego, child's mind reasons to do something like that. Why would you leave a note from the highest self? There's only one motivation. Because it's the right thing to do. A strong sense of self opens that door so that you can see what the right thing to do is, even if it is not the popular decision, you see? Okay. Another reason it's so important. This article goes on to say that people with a strong sense of self reap the following benefits. So here they are. More confidence, healthier friendships and relationships, higher self-esteem, self-awareness, and I have a little something to say about that, and that is I don't think you could even do this work without self-awareness. So I think your self-awareness and your dedication to that actually comes first before you ever start finding the sense of self. It's not something that comes along with the sense of self. It's something that is established far earlier and follows you the rest of your life. Self-awareness helps everything. Another benefit is the increased ability to live a life that is in line with one's values. Yeah, because you're aware of doing that. So you maintain all these things, these wonderful gifts and benefits. One of the ways you maintain is through boundaries. Okay. We are all happier if we live in a way that is aligned with our values. And I want to go back to choosing those 3 values that you are, okay? You'll notice that once you choose them and you go through a week or two, observe what upsets you and observe to the degree that you're upset. The reason I'm asking you to do this is this. If you cross one boundary, you're a little upset. Even if you don't exactly tell yourself, I'm upset because I crossed this one boundary, even though you might have to go back and look at it and find the words, I crossed this one boundary. Your body knows you did. You've got a contract with that to live within these boundaries. The next thing is if you cross 2 of those boundaries, I want you to notice that you did it and how you feel, the degree to which you're upset, because you're going to be more upset. And if you cross all 3 of them, wow, that's going to upset you a lot. Now realize what you're doing, okay? Because a lot of times you're crossing boundaries and you're crossing values. You're throwing your values out the window, and then you're upset and you say, I have no reason to be upset. I don't know why I'm upset. Now, if you worked with me, I'd say, let's go back 24 hours and find out why you're upset. Oh, well, I did do this. Could that have been what really upset me? And it's like, well, yeah. And not talking about it and sweeping it under the rug and distracting yourself with other things isn't going to fix this. The reason you keep doing it over and over and over again is to draw attention to the fact that you're doing it over and over and over again. And we got to wake up and fix it once and for all. We got to have a language, don't we, to fix it. So that's what I'm hoping this value system will do, is give you a language so you can say, I see what I did. And resolve not to do it again. Is it a mistake? Guys, we beat ourselves up over mistakes, and mistakes are just, honestly, not mistakes if you learn something from it and apply it the next time. Where's the mistake? Where's the mistake? Okay. So it's really important to take time to look at your values. Please take me seriously. Go find that sheet, a long list of values. Really contemplate on it. Don't just choose it like that. Don't choose what you want to be. Choose what you are. Start there. I hope that by the end of your journey, long years from now, when you kick off this earth, all of those values will be part of you, because you're everything. And when you're one with all life, you realize they're all you, okay? But you've never exercised this part of you before, this awareness before, so it's going to be real important to start with 3. Okay, good. So let's talk about, I want to talk about one other thing. I want to talk about social media. It is necessary, I suppose, in this world, but it is being used in such an unaware, unenlightened way. Who gives anybody the right to criticize or shame or blame anybody else? You know, I go back to that thing that Jesus said about casting the first stone. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Guys, this is our modern version of that. The thing to make the world better is you looking at you, not you looking at other people and telling them what you think. In fact, what I want to say is telling anybody what you think without an invitation is simply you being insecure. Isn't that interesting? The more sure we are of things, the more we reveal that we are unsure. So please, those of you that are listening to this show, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but use that well. Connect, tell people you care about them and love them. Don't tell people what to do. Ignore people that do that, because if we criticize them, you're doing the same thing. Just look away. It's really just an incredibly detrimental thing to a lot of people's well-being, and yet they get on it. I know people that get on that and are very active on that and are, by the way, never active in their own lives. They don't like to live their lives. They like to sit in their little dark room with their computer and interact on social media. And that's not living. That's artificial, isn't it? It is. We all need a strong and vital community. You and I have a community right now. You know, we're not exposed to COVID. Isn't that nice? Here we are together doing this. And it's the energy that makes us feel close to each other, not the fact that we're in the same room together. It's the energy that I'm giving you and you're giving me. There's a loop here. We all need to be more sensitive to energy, and then we wouldn't feel so alone. Okay. Now, there are some suggestions about how to develop a sense of self, and I think these suggestions are valid. First of all, find the things you love to do and do them. Now that sounds easier than it appears. The reason I say that is if you have really been trained out of yourself, out of who you really are and the sense of self, there's a depression, however moderate, that can come along in that denial of self. I've often said that depression is like this table, this desk I'm on, filled with beautiful things, and all of which you'd like to pick up and investigate, and there's a blanket over it so you can't see which ones to pick up and investigate. You know they're there, but you just can't see. That's what depression does, guys. Depression often comes from this denial of who you really are. Who's denied it? Yeah, possibly your parents, possibly your mate, possibly you, who have allowed it. Certainly, we have learning experiences when we're young and we can't do anything about those because we're kids, right? But this is the evolvement of the self. We're not kids now. We are creators of our lives, and we can keep doing what we learned when we were young. But why? Why, when a sense of self and the beneficence of God indigenous to that awaits? Now, here's what I suggest about depression. I have several suggestions. Number one, depression is a rut. I always use this example. If you take a pen and you take a piece of paper and you run it back and forth over the same line, throw the pen away and feel the piece of paper, you feel a rut, right? It's caused by repetition over and over and over again, the same line. Well, lives are like that as well. When we're depressed, we start narrowing our lives. We see less, we do less, we do the same thing over and over again. We drag ourselves to the computer, we do our work, we drag ourselves home, we fall into bed, we get up the next day, we do the same thing. Oh, guys, no wonder you're depressed. We can't do that. Now, here's the thing. When you're depressed, you genuinely don't have that energy anymore. You don't have that creative spark anymore. You've trained yourself out of it. It's still there. And the only way, one of the ways you get it back, it's not the only way because I'm going to give you some other ways, but one of the ways you get it back is by doing something different, by thinking something different, by feeling something different, by doing something physically different, by thinking more spiritual thoughts that are different. That's how to do it. But you don't have any energy. And here's the trick. We say, oh, I don't have any energy to do that. I don't feel like doing that. And I say, you know what? This is a time that you got to go above and beyond those feelings, because those feelings are telling you, I can't, I don't, I won't, and you got to do it. And you got to do it. Get out of the rut by thinking something different, feeling something different, doing something different, and having different spiritual thought. Go investigate things. Take some classes. Do things that are different. Now, another way to get to this energy of doing what you love to do when you have no idea what that is to think back at a very, very creative time in your life. 12, 13, 14 years old. Adolescence. When poor teachers absolutely don't know what to do with somebody like that, when they're bouncing off the walls and they got all that energy. Whatever you were interested in, whatever topics you were interested in, whatever you loved back then, is what you ought to give yourself permission now to investigate, to take some classes in, to expand. That was essentially, the essential you was coming out, even if it was squashed, even if you squashed it. in later years. Really important. What did you love? 12, 13, 14 years old. Give yourself permission to go and find that and experiment with that and see what that is now for you. And that's how to bypass depression as well. And guys, I want to put one other thing on the table, and that is, why not be a novice? I have a lot of people that think they have developed themselves so highly in this or that they're uncomfortable with learning something new. They're uncomfortable with learning something new. Oh, for God's sake, build a boat in the basement. Write a novel. Do something. Get lots of books. Take some classes. Learn something. Make mistakes. Why not? Why not? You see, only when we're insecure do we go, oh, I'm going to fail. I'm going to avoid the fact that I could fail doing that. Fail! Learn something. Why not? Here's the thing. That points to a poor sense of self. If you don't think very highly of yourself anyway, then failure is a pronouncement. It's a pronouncement on your life. It says that you're always a failure. You're always not worthy. You're always undeserving. You're always below everybody else, or whatever you're else is saying to yourself. You're wrong every time. It's one moment in time. Wake up to that. It's one moment in time that you didn't know and you didn't do your best and you failed. So what? One moment in time. But you see what you're doing. In the ego child's mind, we go, oh, it means something about me. It means something about my character. It means I'm lesser. No, you're not. And you can't let your ego child's mind talk to you that way. Now, when something like that is happening, what do we do? What do we do as people? In our unaware state, we say, I'm queen of the world. No, I'm not going to believe that. I'm going to believe this. And this is just the ego child's mind talking to the ego child's mind. You don't want to do that, kids. You got to be the highest self and tell the truth. Many people can't find the truth without somebody like a counselor, like me or somebody else, saying, here's the truth. So here's the truth. I failed because this was one moment in time. I didn't have all the information. I've got that information now that I needed. I'm going to apply it next time. Has nothing to do with my character. I like me for trying to learn and be the best I am. My life is made of light and dark, failures and successes, and I'm grateful for it all. Now that's the truth. Good. All right. Moving along. I do say it's really important to learn, whether you learn from books, whether you learn from classes. Don't forget to don't embrace your ignorance. Embrace not knowing something. Embrace learning new things. Easy to say, but we've got to get past the ego that thinks you have to know everything to be valuable. And you don't have to know anything to be valuable. You just have to be open to learning, right? Yeah. Okay. Another thing is to spend time with yourself. According to this article, that's the way she says it. She says to spend time with yourself. It's a great way to develop a sense of who you are without any external influences. You know, the first thing I think about with this one is there was a test a number of years ago. I think it was in the last 10 years, 10 or 12 years. And this study invited people in off the street, I think some of which were college students, but I think they were average people. And they put them in a room that was completely void of anything interesting. It's just a room and a chair and a button. And their instruction was to stay in there. I can't remember what the exact amount of time was. I want to say 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, alone. And if they found it uncomfortable, they could punch the button, and it would shock them. There was an electric shock they got from punching the button. You might think that's a joke. That wasn't a joke. They got a shock if they punched that button. A lot of people punched the button. They couldn't stay with their thoughts. They couldn't stay with the acceptance of self for 15 to 20 minutes and their own thoughts and feelings. There were more men than women that punched that button, which I thought was interesting. Women, I think because of the way our brains are wired, because of the cross currents in the hemispheres, are a little more open to our thoughts and feelings, and a little more comfortable with those things. Men's brains are wired to front to back. Ours are wired, women's are wired cross current. So men deal with what is in front of them, according to some scientific studies I've read. Nevertheless, could you sit in a room for 15 or 20 minutes with your thoughts without punching that damn button? I think it's really important skill to develop. I think it's extremely important to develop. I think it's I'm going to take it a step further and say, in this day and time, you better get comfortable with not knowing. We've got to be tolerant of not knowing. Because let me tell you right now, there are a lot of hidden things out there. And if you have to have a resolve to everything, if you have to have an absolute, you are doing yourself a disservice. Instead of absolutely knowing that God is right there with you at all times, and that you're in partnership, and that it's all perfect. And that you'll deal with things as they come up, because you're going to be in your highest self and you'll have solutions. The highest self is the part of you that has the solutions and has the action. The ego child's mind is the one where you are going to have to argue with yourself, dither, talk you out of things. Guys, you're just simply in the wrong mind. That's what's going on there. I think it's extremely important. We talked about this before, and she does say, take all the personality tests you want, find out about yourself. Of course, I think that's a marvelous thing to do. But don't let anything be at the expense of your connection in relationships. Relationships are extremely important to develop, to have around you. And the quality of the relationships is extremely important. And this is what I mean. Some people attach to others. And this is out of the ego child's mind. They attach. They do something for you because if they ever get in trouble, they expect you to do something for them. It's that kind of neediness and pulling. The best relationships are the ones that connect. And there's an exchange of energy. And I want to say, if any of your relationships aren't an exchange of energy, you may want to really take a look at them. Because a great relationship is an exchange of energy. It's a loop, you see. So, spending time with yourself. she goes on to say, and I agree with this, that, everything is significant here. I'm going to say that. Everything's significant. What music do you listen to? I personally, these days,